you could do a post on Facebook, 15, 20, 30 minutes later, it's gone. Right? Most of the impact will happen in the first 1 hour or so. Right? So here you got your user or your shopper to share the information, but if the lifetime is only an hour or so, that's not very effective. So you want to do it in a way so that you can capture the data and you can replay it back on your own website or through other interesting social widgets. So that's actually some of the areas that we are focusing on as well, and I can potentially show you some examples offline of some of the things that we have done. May or may not be directly applicable to what you're doing, but you can probably get some ideas from there. Is the key thing to think about is basically focus on three different things. One, how can you maximize the number of shoppers who convert into brand ambassadors, who are spreading the word? How can you maximize that, number one? Number two, how can you maximize the impact from every such recommendation? Make sure that it is traveling across multiple channels. It's not just Facebook or Twitter. You can look at email and then G+ and whatnot. Both in terms of the breadth of channels as well as the longevity of that post, right? So over a period of time. So later on, 6 months later, if a friend wants to get an opinion on the service, they should be able to discover that post. And the third is then tying in analytics into all of that so that you can actually measure the impact and see how well that's performing.
Hi, my name is Vidya. I'm a technologist with PayPal, and I have a general question for the panel on an observation. A lot of the social sites assume either that customers want complete privacy or that customers have no issues with privacy, right? But I think the reality, at least in my case, and I think this would be true for most, is that although I might be very happy to say, hey, I got my Siri iPhone or I got my first ever pasta machine, I'm not really excited to tell that I got my another set of cutlery, I don't really want to know where I got my scarf because I don't want all my friends buying it. There are a lot of things that I don't necessarily want to broadcast, but I might feel comfortable sharing if someone asks me, but I wouldn't put it out there. And there are a lot of things where I just like a brand, or yeah, I bought a television and I did a lot of research, but I'm not really going to broadcast it, but sure, it can be out there. So if someone is looking for it in my network, if I couldn't be bothered for them to find out and they still find out, I'm okay with it. So what are your thoughts on this, gradation in consumer eagerness to expose this data publicly, privately, selectively, and how do you see things evolving around it?
So first of all, I think you're absolutely right. It has to be an opt-in by the consumers. Those of you recall, Facebook tried this Beacon project several years ago, where they started automatically sharing information about the movie that you're watching on Blockbuster. It suddenly showed up on my Facebook profile one day. I was glad that I was not watching that other movie that I was planning to watch. But it just showed up, right? So that was just automatic sharing, and that was one extreme of it where it didn't even ask me for the permission. So going back to your point, it has to be opt-in, number one. But having said that, from a business point of view, the businesses want to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to share that information, right? And potentially tie some sort of incentive, thank you points, etc., with that as well, because you are sharing that information and you're helping the business out by sharing that information. So they should be able to thank you for that. But it is going to depend on person to person. It's going to depend on the product category as well. As you mentioned, there are certain things, you bought some cutlery or I just bought a new printer cable. That's not something very exciting for me to share, and I'm not going to do it, right? But there are certain categories of products that I feel passionate about that I will share, and that category will vary from person to person. But as that data gets collected over a period of time, it starts benefiting everyone as a community, because 6 months later when I want to buy a camera, if I can find out which of my friends have bought a camera in the last 6 months and what kind of a camera they bought, that's a very useful information, right? So that's really been our focus as well. And it is hard thing to marry. I mean, but you need to give users the choice. That's been our take, has been that, let the users choose what they want to share, and let them decide.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, there are certain things like in travel, for example, you may be interested in taking a trip to Thailand, and you're going to Bangkok, and it might be very valuable to be able to see if anyone in your circle or some set of circles has been there before and where they've stayed, and it'd be great to talk to them about their recommendation based on their firsthand experience, because that's what you do in the offline world. Before the internet and before we were all connected online, that's exactly what you'd do if you were going somewhere like that. You'd talk to your friends. And so being able to discover and enable the discovery that one of your friends actually has been there, I think that can be valuable. But I totally agree. I think it needs to be personalized, and different people have a different comfort level, a huge range in differences in comfort level in terms of what they share and what they don't share.
Yeah, I totally agree with these guys. I think the interesting observation here is the stuff that you don't want to share, the printer cable or whatever it is, your friends also perceive that as spam, right? And like companies that are turning consumers into spam engines are not creating a great brand for themselves, because this is like the process by which you're creating your brand. So if you're one of our customers, we turn you into spam engine, your friends saying, hey, they don't have a great perception of us for helping in that process. Potentially they don't have a great perception of you as well, but so I think that's not something that great brands should do. And I think the notion here is not so much of privacy. I think privacy is part of it, but I think more importantly, people are sharing tons of stuff, right? So we are living in a world which is not very private, it's much more social. So I think the important notion is I think a lot of people sort of quote unquote technically call it like a notion of agency, which is giving the user control. And I think if you give the user that control and make them empowered, they feel they actually share a lot more. So if you know sort of what are the controls and what shows are where, you're more likely to actually share than in a situation where you are unaware of sort of what's going on. So I think these two kind of notions are linked hand in hand. I think privacy to a large extent, if you look online, people are sharing a lot of stuff. So overall, I think privacy as a headline is not sort of the biggest thing in the minds of users, but at the same time, people are not willing to be social in settings which don't give them that level of agency or level of control to control sort of what goes on. And I think just from flipping it around from brand point of view, it's not a great idea to turn your consumers into spam engines.
Can I add one to the camera example that he gave earlier? So we used to have the DP review, right, for cameras, and that was the place that used to go for the review because it was unbiased and you had credibility. You believed the guy who was doing the review because it was totally unbiased. And I think that was the reason why Amazon ended up buying them, because it was in their interest. Eventually people will buy cameras. With Facebook and all coming in, what happened is that our network started to become, it was easy to tap into our friends, but it doesn't mean that the views that they provide generally may be the right view or not. It may not be. The problem is you don't know where to look for credible sources, and we end up looking at our friends for saying they might be credible. But I think not having an unbiased, credible view of things is that's I think it's harder to discover that. Saying, as the gentleman mentioned about travel to wherever it is, I need to have trust in the guy who's saying that is not paid by the travel agency or anything, and what he is saying is right. And how do you establish that credibility with the guy that you're looking at it? Then he did not be my friend to trust him. But if I look at his previous record and things like that, I can trust him. Today what we are doing is we are looking at our friends around and saying, oh, let me see what he bought or what she bought. I think it's just because Facebook is there and you can go the graph, everyone is trying to use that as the advertising mechanism, and eventually it will become spam engines, or we'll just stop looking at all of the stuff that's happening around and use Facebook just to communicate, but not to look at any products as such. That's my view.
So two things. First, let me just add to the previous question about privacy. So as everybody said, and I completely agree, obviously right now it's a bit of a wild west in terms of privacy. And as you're saying, there's a bit of a backlash. I would expect that at some point there will be some best practices that would emerge as to what is an appropriate amount of privacy. And gradually, I would think there would be some tools which would help you manage. Just like your antivirus, you would do an audit to see this is where the privacy setting is, this looks off, this looks right, and there's a red flag. So, because eventually users, it could be too much to manage yourself manually for each app, what's the privacy setting. Regarding your point you mentioned about expert reviews versus friends, there's a place for both. Sometimes you need expert reviews, sometimes you need friend reviews, and it's for different kinds of things. When you buy a high-end camera, that's more appropriate for an expert review. Looking for a restaurant recommendation or movie recommendation, expert review doesn't mean a whole lot. So what Facebook has enabled, so I completely agree, it's it is noisy, and it'll probably get, the way it's going because the Wild West, it will probably get more noisy. So there will be new innovations at that point. Either it becomes too noisy, or Facebook or there will be other tools to help filter out to see what you're really interested in. But I don't see that people would use one or the other. It's probably a combination.
Just to add to that, there was a research report published by Gartner which mentioned that about 74% of the buying decisions are influenced by about 20% of the shoppers. So we all know in our friend circle there are some people who are compulsive researchers, and they will do all the research and they'll figure out what to buy. And there are a whole bunch of other people who just piggyback on that and say, I know this person, if I need to buy a camera, I'll just ask this friend and I'll just buy what he's bought, right? Therefore, I agree with Ankur. There is a place for both expert reviews and friend reviews, and there are in fact majority of people end up going with their friend recommendation. There are a few people who do all the research, and everybody else just tends to follow them.
I guess I want to 100% I agree with that. I have friends who do a lot of work, and I trust them because they're really focused on that particular subject. And if they buy it, I go buy it. But the subject of automatically, if you buy something, posting that you bought it is something that I don't believe in. I think you need to give more controls to the person to post it. Because if I buy something, I want to use it for a few months before I recommend it. I don't want to automatically post it to my site that I bought this, because that purchase may be a mistake. So I usually make my recommendation a couple of months, a few months after I've used it and evaluated it. So if you just ask me, you bought this, do you want to post it to your Facebook? 100% of the time I say no. Because what I've bought may be a mistake. I want to have an option that this is in my Facebook, and when I'm ready, I select it, write a comment, and then post it. So giving some degree of control, I think, to have more meaningful recommendation, that would make more sense than automatic posting.
I think ideally what you want to do is you want to have a way for people to declare ownership without broadcasting it necessarily, right? So if I could say that yes, I bought this camera, but I don't necessarily want to announce it to the world, but if somebody wants to one of my friends proactively wants to look for it to see whether I bought a camera, that information is available, but it's not broadcasted, right? And I think the problem with Facebook right now is that that distinction is not there. If I like something, that gets broadcasted. There is no way for me to just like it without broadcasting it, right? And I think that's a gap. And if we can, allow users a way to announce ownership or announce that I like something without necessarily telling the world about it, then I think it solves all the problems that we're discussing currently, right?
I was just going to say real quick to tail on that. So we talked a lot about a ton of data, and a lot of the questions that were just asked. We'll learn a lot more in the next months and years, but for right now, we've given as many flexible options to folks to share. In fact, I thought Jay was going to mention that we have shopsocially.com, which is where if you want to just broadcast for your own friends to look at, you can do that. But it's just published just in your own little landing page there, your own profile page. So it's not being published or pushed out to everyone. And that's an option that we present. So you can publish, you can not publish. If you want to come back later and add a review. So we try to give all the flexibility in the world, and there's a ton of different options. And it'll be interesting to see what the data tells us down the road. When you buy that scarf next time, maybe we don't even want to offer the opportunity to share because it did absolutely no value to anybody, the merchant, to your friends, or whatnot. But we don't have that data yet. Flexibility's got to be there. You have to have a lot of options and give the consumer the controls.
Hi, this is more of a technical question. When you drive traffic to your website, when you call what you call managing the incoming clients, the initial traffic, when you hit the like button, is it advisable to drive them to a website or to a fan page or a page on Facebook? And if whatever the preferred destination, why is it a preferred destination?
Take a stab at it. I think no, I think it's not as much of a technology question as a marketing question. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to drive commerce? Are you trying to get more people to like it? Are you trying to get people to engage and have a conversation with you? If you're trying to get people to buy something, then that's what you should focus on. You should probably take people back to your site, or instead of just liking something, get them to like a particular deal, or giving them an offer or whatever. Right? I mean, you first need to figure out what is the goal that you're trying to solve. Right? I mean, is it just brand awareness? Is it actual transaction that you're trying to drive? And one more fan acquisition, and so on and so forth. Right? So if you're looking for fan acquisition, etc., then I would say the Facebook page is probably a better place to go. If you are trying to get people to buy something, it's probably better to take them to your website and get them to do a transaction there. So I think the answer will vary depending on what your goals are.
So I guess that's the last question. Okay, maybe one last question.
All right, so a little bit about privacy. So I know most of you work on Facebook and Twitter related stuff. Their privacy policy change all the time. Sometimes you can access all their data, which is like only 1 year ago. You can have all access of everything. And they changed like last year that you can only access their public data. So it's an ongoing target. Every once in a while they change it. So how do you overcome such an ever-changing privacy issue? Or do you think it's just some sort of technology hurdle? It's not really, in fact, affecting your big picture about social shopping?
So a couple of different takes, and get other people's opinion there as well. First of all, I think when you talk about privacy issue overall in general, so my opinion there is that just because Facebook is giving you more controls over your privacy settings as to who can see what information, doesn't necessarily mean that it is automatically secure. Right? With Facebook having 750 plus million user base, if I'm a hacker, that's a fantastic ROI for me. Right? So as long as my information is there on Facebook, even if I've hidden all my information from all of my friends and everybody else, the fact that the information is there means that somebody could potentially get to it. Right? So first thing is that don't assume that those privacy settings alone by themselves give you all the security. They probably don't. Now, in terms of from a point of view of developer or a company that's trying to stay on top of it, it is frustrating. Facebook keeps changing their policies all the time, and it's not just their privacy policies, etc., but even their platform APIs. They keep deprecating things, and this is constant challenge. We have to stay on top of that and look at every announcement and figure out 2 months later what we've implemented doesn't work anymore, and we have to now move to a different API. That's the world that we live in, and Facebook is probably doesn't realize that it has become really big and can't really act like that startup anymore, but that's how they act.
I think, the challenge, like you and Jay articulated, is there. If you're building on any platform, you're dependent on the platform changing. I think the only advice I would have is, as a developer or a company that's building on these things, like try to get close to the consumer as much as you can, right? And I think consumers, if you're building something of value, I think consumers want to have a direct relationship with you, and that's in the interest of the consumer. That's in your interest. So every user, obviously they have Facebook ID in your system and they have liked some stuff, but they should also you should also have a notion of what that user is in terms of their email. You create a different login mechanism for the same person, know what they have done on your site, and have that data in the form of a cookie, build your own analytics systems. So I think the only way to sort of stop chasing like Facebook, which is a really bad direction to go down, is to also build your direct sort of communication with the consumer and build that relationship. And if you're really building something of value, there's no reason why the consumer would not want to have that. In fact, they would rather have their direct relationship than always trust Facebook to give you that data. If they're untrusting, I think there's something potentially wrong with the service. So just look at that and see why is the consumer not engaging directly with us. I think that's kind of what I would suggest.
We're not on top of Facebook or other platforms, so we don't have that problem. So, no comment.
Question in the back. Are we out of time?
We're kind of out of time. Go ahead. This is the last question.
You're it.
Given all this talk, how much percentage of the existing commerce, the way it is done right now, will move towards social commerce, or in terms of revenue and also maybe in terms of percentage? Just giving all this effort and thing, right? How much is it going to change?
The prediction is that I think by 2015 about 50% of it will be influenced by social media, or some sort of social aspect. Exactly what form is hard to say. I view social as not an end product, but really a means to enable things, right? Think about social is not television, social is electricity that drives all the other things, right? So that's how you should really view that. So it will embed itself practically in all form of commerce, and there will be some level of influence that it will exert. It's hard to predict exactly how to allocate that percentage to social. That this, because I had social integrated, I got this transaction done versus whether it would have happened outside of that. That's kind of hard to say. But what you will see is that social will be integrated more and more into the site experience itself. As I mentioned in my presentation, people initially what the retailers did was they tried to bring their storefront over to Facebook, and that didn't quite work. They just said, hey, here's my store online. Let me just bring that store to Facebook. Doesn't work very well. And then they tried. What they are trying to do is now to integrate social aspects into the site itself, and that is beginning to work very well. And if you do it in the right way, one of the best examples is look at Ticketmaster. When you're buying tickets for an event, if you do a Facebook Connect, you can see where your friends are sitting for that particular event, and you can try and buy seats that are next to your friends. There you go. So, but that's a very good way to integrate social into the entire ticket buying experience, right? So you will see more of that kind of innovation and integration over the next few years. So, in my view, commerce will be socially enabled. It's kind of hard to decide exactly what percentage to allocate to it.
So I completely agree with what they mentioned. I wouldn't equate social with Facebook. Social is knowing what your friends and network are doing, what are they buying, what is the behaviors they're showing, and getting influenced by them, and all transactions, whether it be the website or on your mobile, gradually, I would say, depending on the society's appetite for privacy, and then we had quite a bit of discussion on that. To that extent, you'll probably see that enabled. If you go to an e-commerce site, you'll see what your friends are buying, which have bought this kind of product earlier. One of our portfolio companies, Video Genie, what it does is if you go to a site, you can record your experience with the product through a browser. And if you go to, let's say, a Levi's or Intuit site, you can see a video of your friend sharing their experience using the product. So I think everything will be socially enabled to that extent. And to what, as Jay said, percentage is hard to quantify, but I think it will be a lot. It will be degrees of social. That's how it's probably a gradation. And I think a lot depends on how the boundaries we draw in terms of privacy, because data would be, we have the data and we'll have lots of data. But to what extent can we use it, that will be determined by privacy, best practices.
So thanks a lot to all the panelists, all the audience for coming with us, coming to attend with us, and to the assistant chairs who've done such a wonderful job in helping me out and getting all of us together. Before we leave, I want to note that before, like around 6 weeks back, we had 130 members on Meetup. Now we have 220. So that's more than a 70% increase. Among the 220 members that we have, 75 members, among those, apart from the SV Forum mailing list, which was 1,300 members, so 75 of the 220 registered as wanting to come to the forum today. That's a 30% or higher conversion rate, and I'm really proud of that. So in the social spirit, I would really request you, if you like the forum, certainly give us a positive feedback on the Meetup forum, join the SV Forum WebSig email list, and tell your friends about it. I think we are quite ready to leave. But if you want to chat with the panelists, you're welcome to do that. And also, if you have any jobs that you want to advertise, or if you're looking for something, you're welcome to come by and come here and announce it.
Yeah, this is John posting. We're currently looking for a national sales director with experience in supply chain related software sales.
Any reverse logistics and auction experience would be a big plus. So if you know of anyone, they can find us at samauctionsoftware.com. Thank you.
Thanks.